Hi guys, my name is Blume and I'm a healer in ESO, and this guide is intended for these people who are already healing and have a basic knowledge of understanding how to do it, but are not healing in a progressive manner and want to get started on that kind of content. Let me give you a quick introduction to what is expected of a heal in ESO end content and why it is like this. Different than in other MMORPGs, there's no classic healer and classic supporter role. You are both in one. Your main task is keeping your group alive, but just as important than this is supporting the damage, resource management, doing certain mechanics, debuffing enemies and buffing allies, and providing synergies. But your main goal is something bigger than this. Keeping the overview of the group. A lot of times your DDs don't even realize if they position wrong or could improve something. There's already a lot happening for them, and it is good to help them coordinate so that you and their job is as easy as possible. To understand your job a little bit better, you need to know that simply said there are two kinds of incoming damage in this game. There are either one hits that needed to be avoided because they cannot be healed anyways, and bigger damage that is easily healed against with your spammables. During the time where there is none of the explained kinds of damage, you don't concentrate on healing, you concentrate on supporting. Your heal over times will be enough to keep the group up. You will learn rather fast when you need to heal, when you need to overheal, or when you can only keep your HOTS up. Generally speaking, ESO is a kind of game where you want to overheal instead of waiting until your allies' lives are low. You will be healing simultaneously to the incoming damage instead of after. That is because the health pool of your DDs is rather small and things can one-hit them if they don't have full lives. What you can expect from them to make your life a little bit easier is a health pool of 16 to 17k. For tanks, it is a different thing. You will just need to get to know your tanks and their playstyle to understand how much healing you will need to provide them and when. Self-sustained builds can survive longer without your help and can even survive for times without healing at all. They will only need your synergies during that times. Support builds with lower resistance and HP will need a little more love from you. Another thing that is worth mentioning is that some things in healing are not worth arguing about at all, mainly speaking sets and buffs, but other things can be very personal and dependent on your preferences. So this is how I heal at the moment, and it will change and evolve, so I try to keep you guys updated for the next patches. Plus, this is a guide for trial healing. In 4-man content, things are again a little bit different. So, onto my personal stats. Max Magicka 33k. I can sustain with that amount of Magicka very well. It is normal for Agonians to have lower Magicka in general, but they have the potion passive which will help you. Of course, there will be very demanding fights where I will run out of resources, but normally I don't need to heavy attack at all. The higher your Magicka, the more healing you will do. Magicka recovery, I have 2.8k, and I would recommend not to play with less than 2.5k. This stat is very important for your sustain, and recovery is more important than max Magicka for that. Max life, I have 18k, that is a good amount. You can play with 17k as well, but some people even prefer more health. Max stamina, I have 11k. This is relatively low, but because of your potion passive, you will have a good sustain and your healing springs will help you as well because of the trait of the DSA resto staff. As a healer, you will need to block a good amount of times and you will need to cast out of the block often. Spell damage, I have 2.6k. The higher your damage, the higher your outcoming healing will be, but don't expect as much spell damage as from a DD character. Spell critical, I have 41%. This is not really that important, it is more like a bonus. Your healing needs to be enough 100% of the times, and you shouldn't rely that much on critical hits. As mentioned before, when you need to heal, it is often a big amount of damage, and you will need to spam certain skills, and for that critical, it doesn't really matter. Resistances, I have 12 and 16k, but this doesn't really matter that much as well, because you're not a tank. You will either die anyways, or you can block or avoid the damage, or of course heal against it. Race. Race is an important aspect, and one of those things I mentioned that are rather personal. My favorite option are the Agonians. You have higher healing, magicka, and life, but what I personally could not play without anymore is the potion passive. It is a bit in resource management and very powerful, and you will learn to love it. But for people who don't really see the adorableness in lizard people, you could either go with Bretons or Altmer. All three of them work, it's just a personal preference. Class. In my opinion, the class is not worth arguing about in progressive content. Templar all the way. But you could make Wardens or Nightblades work as well. This is not my cup of tea though, and I cannot help you with a progressive setup for them, as you will need a completely different playstyle. Sets. The so-called meta for healers is the following at the moment. You will wear 2 5-piece sets and no monster sets. Both healers will want to have access to the following sets. Spell Power Cure or Spec. This set provides the biggest damage boost in the game for healers. If you overheal an ally, you will grant him a buff that is unique to the set and gives them more weapon and spell damage. Both heals want to wear this set at any times, because the buff will only work for you and 5 other people. Worm or the set with the pretty blue orbs. You will reduce the magicka costs of your whole group for 4%. This will help your group sustain. Only one healer will need to wear this set in a trial, as it buffs the complete group. The area of effect is rather big, so when there will be mechanics where healers need to split from the group, this healer who wears this will always be the one further away from the DDs. Mending. Again, only one heal will need the set in a trial. Even though the set says otherwise itself, in reality it will lower weapon and spell damage from your allies in a 10-meter radius for 3 seconds if you cast a ground healing ability. As the area of effect is smaller than Worm, the heal wearing this will always be the one closer to the group and therefore the enemies as well. Other mentionable sets are Yorvul's Guidance. This set will come into the game with the next DLC. It will probably change the meta if it is implemented as they announce it in the current PTS patches. It will elongate all major and minor buffs plus damage shields you grant for 40%. That is huge. This will help a lot with higher uptimes, especially for groups who struggle with a good horn rotation. This set could potentially replace Worm. Infallible Mage. This set is only needed for one healer at bosses that cannot be set off balance. Examples for that are Atronachs. Master Architect. I would not recommend this set to unexperienced groups, as you need to know when and how to use it effectively, but just know that there is a set out there like this who may be worth a try if you are further experienced. You will wear a full set of light armor divines, or you could run infused on the big body pieces for enchantment, either all max magicka or prismatic tri-stat glyphs on the big pieces. Weapons. In my opinion, there are only 3 options for healers. The Master Restoration Staff from Veteran Dragonstar Arena. This will restore stamina with every first tick of your healing springs per target. This is a good support for tanks and stam DDs, but for yourself as well. Different than the MSA Resto Staff, this is not only for your own sustain but for the group. That is why I prefer this over the MSA Staff. Then there is the perfect Asylum Resto Staff you get from VAS Hard Mode. You need to know how to use this weapon effectively, and it is very hard to get it. In my opinion, you don't really need that sustain help it provides, and you can live without it. Plus, on your back bar, you want the Lightning Staff of the Veteran MSA. This is pretty much self-explanatory and a nice to have, but you will be fine with the random Destro Staff as well, as long as it is a lightning one, of course. For the enchantments, you want Berserk on your Resto Staff, which will increase your weapon and spell damage, and Weakening on your Destro Staff, which will decrease the enemy's weapon and spell damage. To proc these enchantments, you will need to do light or heavy attacks with the Restoration Staff, but for the Destruction Staff, your blockade will be enough to keep the Weakening up by itself. For the traits, you want powered on your resto staff and infused on your desto staff. Buff food. You can either use the Clockwork City Citrus Fillet, which is gold and very expensive as it needs perfect row to be crafted. On PC it is about 4.5k gold per piece. Or you can just run good old purple Witch Mother's Brew. Potions. I use the Essence of Spell Power pots on cooldown, so they're always active. This will help you tremendously to sustain, especially with the alchemy passive. And now to the part you have been waiting for, skills. Combat Prayer. This is the most important tool as a healer. Aim for a very high uptime, something like 80 or 90%. This buff only affects 6 people including you, and it does not stack. That means that positioning is key to use this effectively. For the highest uptime, positioning your DDs in 2 camps so every heal can keep the combat prayer up is needed. When you're casting this, you want your DDs to stand in it at all times. This skill is my main spammable, not the healing springs. Healing springs. If there's big incoming damage, this will be your spammable. You can cast it easily out of the block. DDs always need to stand in range for this skill. In a trial setup, this heal is almost for free because you get resources back from every first tick per heal target. That means spamming is easy on your resources. Use that trick. Breath of Life. Never spam this skill. This is only your oh shit somebody's dying heal or when the tank is extremely low. This focuses on the ally with the lowest percentage health. It doesn't make sense at all to spam this or use it even regularly, but still you need it slotted for those oh shit situations. Analyzing my combat metrics, roughly only 0.1% of my healing was done by this during fights, so I really only use it maybe once in a whole trial. This is the biggest burst heal in the game, but it doesn't apply a hot or nothing. This is really only a one-time big healing and that's it, plus it's very expensive. Ritual of Retribution. This is not really for healing against damage. This is a big round AoE that will keep your spell power cure buff up. As long as this ability is on the ground and you do your job right, your allies will be overhealed and that procs the spec buff. Inner Light. This is my flex spot and can be swapped accordingly. If you don't really need another healing skill, it is nice to have that 7% extra magicka, especially on your front bar. You don't really activate this, you just have it slotted. Elemental Blockade. This is not for dealing damage, but for providing off-balance to the enemies. That is why we use a lightning staff. Off-balance is a big DPS boost at the moment, but it may change in the next patch completely and we have to overthink the meta. Plus, this will keep our weakening enchantment up. Dampen Magic. This is a personal preference as it depends on your playstyle. You could use Harness Magicka as well. If you play correctly, you can play completely without a shield, but this can save your ass if you need it. Elemental Drain. Keep it always up. This skill is for free, so use it. It is a very big factor for magicka resource management and damage boost for magicka DDs. It is enough if one heal has this slotted, except for some specific cases. Luminous Shards. They always need to be accessible for your tanks, not only for resources, because good tanks may not really need your support there, but to keep their alkosh uptime up. Melee DDs like stealing these as well, so always renew them more than you would theoretically need, and listen to the noise it makes when somebody uses them. These can be only used once and share the same cooldown as the orbs, but synergies will change in the next patch and there will be differences with the global cooldown and so on. Energy Orbs or Bubbles. This is a synergy that DDs love to use for their resource management, so you can throw bubbles to them especially after they got revived. Their healing is decent too, but here again this synergy is mainly for your tanks to keep their alkosh up. At the moment we have a heavy attack rotation meta, that means that all of your DDs should be able to completely self-sustain. Melee DDs should not run out of magicka at all, and for magicka DDs the elemental drain should be enough. But who's perfect? Just make them happy and throw some orbs here and there, but watch out because they are expensive. For ultis, you will always need the aggressive Warhorn, and if you don't need another ultimate in that trial or in that fight, just have it double slotted so you cannot just by accident use a different ult. A good horn rotation is very important for damage and sustain. All healers and all tanks need this. Skills that you sometimes need and use the flex spot for are, for example, the Purge. Just inform yourself in which trials you will need this. And examples for that are VMOL, VAS, and VHOV. This is a very expensive skill and only cleans the closest 5 allies and you, and is sometimes buggy. It is still a must in these certain fights, and purging too late can be the cause for a complete group wipe. The Nova Ultimate. It can be helpful for certain mechanics where there is a lot of incoming damage, as it reduces all incoming damage. Otherwise, these, as I would suggest, are all the skills you need at the start to become a progressive trial healer. Of course, there will always be situations where you need to adapt and use different skills, but I think it's not the time right now to tell you this when you're just starting out. In general, these would be the basic things you need to know to start healing V-trials, and don't forget that a lot to being a good heal is experience. You will need to learn how to adapt and act situational. There is no strict rotation as a heal since every fight will be different, but as a start, just try keeping up all the buffs and don't let them run out to get to know your skills. Healing can be discouraging at the beginning, but it will get easier the more experience you get. You will be critiqued a lot as a healer since a lot of the group's success will be dependent on you. I hope this guide helped you out. This is my first video of this kind, so I hope I will progress with my videos in the future. If you have any questions, feel free to ask in the comments. And other than that, just have a good one and take care. Blume.